thank you, sir, for joining النهار. So there is a race between a political solution and the escalation between Hezbollah and Israel. What do you see?
Well, I think we need to try and stop the escalation and look at the alternative. And I think there is a good alternative, which involves implementing Resolution 1701. That means Hezbollah moving their forces north of the Litani River. It means proper demarcation of the blue line of the border. It means the training up and the use of Lebanese armed forces to do more patrolling on the border. And I think if we put those things together, sensitively, carefully, we can demonstrate that there's a path to peace and stability rather than a path to war. But we need to move fast.
What are the chances of diplomatic solutions in that?
I think there's a good chance because I don't think, from what I'm told, that Hezbollah wants to have an escalation into war. I don't think, from what I'm told, that Israel wants an escalation into war. But what you do hear from the Israelis is that they've got 80 to 100,000 people who've had to move out of their homes in northern Israel. They need to move back to their homes, and for that you need greater security. And I'm sure people in Lebanon would say the same thing. So there is a need for this diplomacy. There's a need for this movement of Hezbollah and Lebanese armed forces and the strengthening of UNIFIL. There's a need for all these things. They are fixable. So I think it's important to come, to listen, as I've been doing today with your Prime Minister, with the commander of the Lebanese armed forces, to listen to what they think is necessary, and then friends of Lebanon, like the United Kingdom, should help to put these things in place.
What was your direct message to the Lebanese officials concerning this issue?
Well, my direct message to the Lebanese officials, to the Prime Minister, to the Speaker of your Parliament, the message was that Britain wants to help. We think that if you go back 10 years to when I was Prime Minister, we started this training program with the Lebanese Armed Forces, building up the Lebanese border regiments. It's been incredibly successful. We've trained 26,500 Lebanese armed soldiers. We're proud to have done that. They've done a fantastic job on your border with Syria. They've stopped drug smuggling, they've stopped people smuggling, they stopped the ISIL incursion that could have taken place after the formation of the ISIL caliphate in Syria and Iraq. So they've done a great job, and I think part of what's required is for them to play a greater role in southern Lebanon as Hezbollah move their forces away from the border. And so what I was here to ask was, how can we help? Is there more we can do? And we're a willing partner.
Do you believe, sir, that any ceasefire in Gaza might persuade Israel to freeze the demand of Hezbollah retreat a few kilometers from the northern border?
I don't think, I think a ceasefire in Gaza would be a very good thing if we have a pause, which we're arguing for now, a pause in the fighting so we can have hostages released, we can get aid in, and then we try and turn that pause into a sustainable ceasefire. That'd be a very good thing. Will that automatically change everything here? It provides greater opportunity for diplomacy, but I still think that for stability and security we'll need the Hezbollah forces to move away from the border, because at the moment it's not possible for Israeli families to return home in the north of Israel, just as it's difficult for Lebanese families in the south of Lebanon. So what we need is a more stable border with Hezbollah away from the border, Lebanese armed forces with greater responsibility for the border. That, I think, is a more stable situation.
What factors lead to the belief that a political solution is still possible between the Israelis and Palestinians years after Oslo agreement faltered?
Well, I would say that fundamentally the question is still the same. How do two groups of people share the land in a two-state solution, living next door to each other? That's still the same question. I think why it's become more urgent and more pressing is I think we can see that the last 30 years, the years since Oslo, have not been years of success. They've not been truly successful for Israel because, of course, their economy has grown, livelihoods have got better, they've spent a lot on security, but fundamentally they don't have that real security that you have from having your own state and your neighbours having their own state. And obviously for Palestine, for Palestinians, it's not been a time where they've been able to achieve what they most want, which is the dignity and security of a state. So I think we look back at 30 years and ask ourselves, do we want the next 30 years to look like the last 30 years? No, we don't. We don't want to go back to the status quo before October the 7th. We need to try and find a new way forward where we get genuine peace and stability. So the question hasn't changed, but the answer is becoming more pressing.
But what forms this Palestinian state would look like? And what role does the Palestinian Authority have to play?
Well, I think, first of all, we need the pause, then the sustainable ceasefire, then the start of a solution. I think part of that is going to be the Palestinian Authority coming forward with a refreshed government, perhaps a more technocratic government, with new figures and new faces that is capable of working both in Gaza and the West Bank. So I think that needs to change. As to what a Palestinian state should look like, this is something that we need to start discussing and debating. The friends of a solution need to come together. That's the Arab states, that is countries that have a role to play, I think, and can help, like Britain or France and America, and to say, right, how can we create momentum towards this solution? Often the Israelis will say there are aspects of a state they find really hard. They don't want a Palestinian state to have a huge army. You don't want a Palestinian state to have alliances with countries like Iran, but we should focus on what are the things that a Palestinian state could have and build from there rather than asking what can a Palestinian state not have.
Last, is the timing of your approach related to the potential truce proposal between Israel and Hamas?
In the last 2 months, I've visited 9 Arab states, and I've been to the region, I think now 3 times. And so my approach is ongoing. It's not particularly related to any one issue, but as we are here today, it does seem there is a prospect of a potential pause in the fighting. It could be some days off, it could be some weeks off. I'm hopeful. And I think the closer that gets, the more important it is to start trying to solve the other issues. So the issue of the Lebanese-Israeli border and the presence of Hezbollah and the need to train Lebanese armed forces and the need to get the border dispute sorted out, that becomes more urgent. What we don't want is for a pause to happen in Gaza and for us to waste time. When that pause happens, we should pour our efforts into trying to solve all the problems, to create momentum so that people can see that there's momentum for peace rather than momentum for war.